Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Chris Hatch from Landmark Information. Pleasure to be able to present this really training video for you in association with Searchmove. We call this the Which Report webinar, and essentially what we're going to be doing is looking at some of the subtle differences between the landmark reports. That's the main intention. I'll just touch very lightly on things like due diligence, client care, etc. A little bit of an update on some of the legislation, but essentially what I'd like to do is focus entirely on the differences between some of the landmark reports that are available through Searchmove. So let's just have a look at some of this now. Essentially, the reason that we carry out environmental reports for your conveyancing transactions is all down to the Environmental Protection Act. That really is the backbone of why we do these reports in the first place. And as you're well aware, that all became available in about the year 2000. Obviously, you do get some very good guidance from the Law Society. They give you some help and advice on how to deal with things like contaminated land, and now, of course, flooding with the introduction of the Flood Practice Note. And the SRA also give you some guidance, not very specific in terms of the searches, other than to say that you need to look at the property, its location, etc., and of course act in the best interests of your clients quite naturally. So let's have a look at some of these reports in a little bit more detail. As a company, we would recommend that in every transaction you do carry out a contaminated land search, and I'm pleased to say that the majority of solicitors do just that. We would also recommend a planning report because we've seen an exponential increase in the request for planning reports since the government have changed the rules, let's say, relaxed the planning laws for planning. We've seen an exponential growth in the requests for planning reports. So in terms of contaminated land, and this is the bit where I'm not going to really teach you to suck eggs, but I mentioned the warning card from the Law Society, which was introduced shortly after the introduction of the Environmental Protection Act. That came out in 2001. The practice note was changed from a warning card to a practice note in 2014, but it does give you some really useful guidance in terms of discussing the issues of contaminated land and flood with your clients. The Environmental Protection Act itself came about in the year 2000. It had its first update in 2012, where it was made very much shorter document. Previously, it was a bit like a Charles Dickens novel, a very complex document to try and understand. It's been rewritten in sort of layman's terms, so you don't have to be an environmental consultant to understand it. And at the same time, they did introduce this 4-category test to help you discern what is and what isn't contaminated land. So the numbers 1 to 4, numbers 1 and 2 being land which poses a significant possibility of significant harm. The fact that significant is mentioned twice, I think, explains that it's a fairly serious situation, or a possibility of significant harm. So SPOSH and POSH seem to be the two buzzwords at the moment. Category 3 is land which may have some contamination, but it can very easily be remediated at the development stage under the planning regime. And category 4, there's no contamination on that site at all. They also use this as a good opportunity to look at the cost of remediated land, because it was felt those costs really were rising exponentially. So in terms of contaminated land, obviously generally the first time you touch base with Landmark is when you're discussing the issue of a desktop report. But prior to that, of course, you do need to talk about contamination in general terms with your client, and certainly for residential clients, the desktop report is normally the first port of call. With commercial transactions, it's a little bit more involved. You have to look at especially if there is contamination, looking at some of the potential liabilities, but also looking at some of the exclusion clauses where the client can sell the land with knowledge that there is contamination, and then the buyer and the seller can come to some arrangement in terms of the cost. But at some stage, you will commission an independent environmental report, and hopefully, in this case, it will be a Landmark desktop report. Now, 9 times out of 10, these reports will come back to you very, very quickly, and they'll come back with a pass, which is what we're all hoping for, of course. From time to time, you will get a further action. This is where something has been identified from the data sets. And on those occasions, we ask you to look at the next steps section within our report and provide us with some support information. And if you get that information back to us, we will carry out a free of charge review of that report. The details that you provide us with, often it's just an email from the environmental officer for the local authority confirming that that site isn't on their at-risk register. Once our environmental consultants, Argyll, have satisfied themselves that that support information is sufficient, then we'll be able to get that all-important pass certificate back to you. There are, of course, occasions where the contamination is of such a degree we can't get past the further action, and on those occasions, of course, there's the issue of contaminated land insurance policies, which you can take out. It won't resolve the problem, but it'll certainly prevent any further delays in terms of the transaction. Now, for those of you listening to this or watching this presentation that deal with residential transactions, I'm hoping these next couple of slides will be of interest to you. Argyll, our environmental consultants, recognise that there are occasions where you will be acting for a client at number 3 Acacia Avenue on a normal conveyancing transaction, and we know because of the historical nature of that site. Here you can see on the map that there was river works and other industrial areas there, which have subsequently over time been redeveloped. But because of that, you get the dreaded further action request. You do all the right things, of course, and go to page 3 of the Landmark report and look at the next steps section. Get that information to us, we carry out that review, we're happy that the area is now a clean site, and we will bring that into our remediated land data set. So in a few months' time, when you're acting for a client at number 7 Acacia Avenue, you don't have to go through that whole process all over again. And of course, this data set is getting larger and larger as time goes by. It's particularly useful with all of the new build developments that are happening up and down the country at the moment. Prior to the residential client sitting in front of you and you acting for that client, there would have been commercial activity, and there may very well have been some redevelopment required on that site. It's been done, and pass certificates have been issued, but occasionally there are delays with the local authority updating their register. So on the first 1 or 2 residential transactions of a new Bovis Homes or a Wimpy Homes site, you might get that further action. But once we're satisfied that that site is clean, then you'll get more and more pass certificates coming through to you. And that's, you know, ideally what everyone wants, and you can all sleep well at night. So hopefully that's good news. So let's just have a look at the 2 core Landmark reports. I say 2, there is another one, of course, our very early Home Check Professional Environmental Report. Been with us a long time, still in use. We tend not to promote it a great deal now, but it's still available from Searchmove, and it costs, oh gosh, in the region of, I think it's £42.50 plus VAT, but it will deal primarily with Part 2A issues, and it will alert you to one or two other environmental risks in the form of flooding and radon. But over the years, we have been building the data sets in our Enviro Search report, and without a doubt, it is now by far the first choice of the majority of law firms up and down the country. Its main function is to deal with contaminated land, Part 2A. And as you can see on the front page, all of the information is at your fingertips. At a glance, you can see if there are any issues or not. In terms of contaminated land, as I say, it fully complies with the Law Society's practice note. This is an automated report. So you request it from Searchmove, and 9 times out of 10, within half an hour to an hour, the report is sitting back in your inbox. This is because all the algorithms pull together, create the report, and return it to you. And within that report, there will be detailed mapping. It'll highlight any risks that have been identified. It'll show you where they are on the mapping. It'll provide historical mapping and contact details on the front page for our own customer service team. Excuse me. As well as that, you can see that there's a number of other alerts on the front of that report. It will certainly alert you to issues of general flood risk in the area. This is not a flood report. It's simply an alert to potential risks. It'll also highlight potential risks in terms of energy and infrastructure, things like wind and solar farms, HS2, Crossrail, and of course the dreaded fracking, which is seems to affect whole swathes of the countryside. And as well as that, it'll talk about radon and other issues. Now, this, as I say, is the most popular report that we produce. It's a point search, so a point is taken within the centre of the property, and then a search radius of 250 metres, a maximum search radius, is thrown out, and the report will identify any potential risks that might affect the future enjoyment or, of course, the value of that your client's property. So you can use this report really for all standard transactions, absolutely every day of the week. What if you have a non-standard transaction? And what is a non-standard transaction? Well, with house prices increasing, if you've got a property that's valued from £500,000 and above, and as I say, that's not difficult in all parts of the country to find those types of properties now. But more importantly, a property which is sitting on a much larger area of land, bigger than your average back garden, front garden. And again, I know the majority of clients have these occasions, and not every day of the week, but from time to time you need to dip into the toolbox and pull out a different report for that situation. So if you have a client with a property that's sitting on land from a half an acre to 10 hectares, we would recommend you use the Argyll Site Solutions Residence Report. Now, there's a number of differences between this, apart from the fact that it deals with high value and larger areas of land. The most important difference is all Argyll reports are manual reports. So the environmental consultant who's been sitting in the office in Brighton physically is pulling together all of the data sets for your client's property. They will then create that report and send it out to you. And because it is a manual report, the author's contact details are on that report. So rather than you speaking to one of our very learned customer service team or one of the the customer service team at Searchmove, you can literally pick up the phone and speak to the environmental consultant that created that report, and they will hold your hand and walk you through that report and help you to get it where it needs to be, i.e. if there's a further action, for argument's sake. Now, one of the other things about this report is it is a polygon search. So if you look at the red boundary of that client's land, and the little X in the middle is the center of the property, all of the land is being searched, because you can see the search radius is thrown out from the boundary of the land. Now, you imagine if your client has a property and they're fortunate enough to have that sitting on 3 or 4 hectares or 3 or 4 acres of land, and you order an Enviro search. You can see that 250-meter search radius of the Enviro search is going to miss the vast majority of the land area that the home is sitting on. And you can bet your bottom dollar, if in years to come there is an environmental issue, the first people that the client is going to call will be your very good selves. So if I come away from this presentation today with nothing other than large areas of land you need the Site Solutions Residence report, I'll be a very happy man. So, Site Solutions Residence deals with all things to do with Part 2A. It fully complies with the Law Society's practice note. But you may be able to see there's a little blue circle on the front of that report. That's because we also incorporate our most comprehensive residential flood report. So it deals with flood and contaminated land. It will also alert you to the 5 key energy and infrastructure issues as well. So things like HS2, Crossrail, fracking, wind and solar farms. So a very comprehensive report. If you do have a client that is sitting, their property is sitting on land greater than 10 hectares, then we would recommend you default to an Argyll commercial report on those occasions. But from anything from 0 to 2 hectares, this report costs £99, and then it's tiered pricing up to 10 hectares. So there you have the 2 most comprehensive reports we believe in the marketplace today. The Enviro search, an automated report. Point search deals with Part 2A and alerts you to other potential risks. And on the left there, the Site Solutions Residence report, which is a manual report and a polygon search. So all of the land is covered for those larger property sizes. Now, for a number of years now, the legal industry have been talking to Landmark and asking for a report that deals with all of the sort of due diligence issues involved in a compliance case in one report. And as you'll know, some of these issues are very heavily regulated. Things like contaminated land and flood most certainly are. Other issues like energy and infrastructure and ground stability issues, less so in terms of regulation, but nevertheless, they are a major concern for your clients. So a lot of you, of course, will be familiar with this report now and already using it. But about 2 years ago now, time really whizzes by, we produced RiskView Residential. Now, again, like all of our reports, it's nice and easy to read. The front cover is got all of the relevant information in the one report. So what's in it? Well, essentially, you have the Enviro search report to deal with contaminated land. You have our energy and infrastructure report. That's the full E&I report. You have a full ground stability report, and I put that rather dramatic graphic because it now includes our brand new Home Check Flood report. So you've got 4 reports in one. So it gives you a very cost-effective report. Our recommended retail price for this product is £83 plus VAT. So very cost-effective. It makes quoting for your clients really easy now. You just have to your services plus the usual and necessary local authority searches plus Risk View Residential. Job done. Very easy to read and understand. As I said, most landmark reports have all of the key information on the front page. So let's have a look. 4 searches in one reduces the solicitor's time to carry out a document review. Why? Well, with this report, we only include risks if they are, or the information of a risk if it is identified. What this means is you get a much lighter weight report. So if it is passed on contaminated land and there's no issues in the other reports, you're going to be printing off something like 6 or 7 sheets of paper. If things have been identified, I think it's about 13 or 14 sheets of paper. So it's much easier and less time consuming for you to go through this document. So that in itself is good news. And of course, it reduces on your printing costs. It reduces the risk or the need to go back to your client and say, oh, on your environmental report, a flood risk has been identified. And if you want to find out how that's going to impact on your property, you need to order another report. No need to do that now because all of these reports are full reports. So that in itself is good news. All of your due diligence, as I mentioned a moment ago, is in the one report, and you have now got this fixed cost, so it does make your life much easier from that point of view. And for those of you who are not using this already, we have a unique online viewer for this report, and I'll show you a couple of slides for that in just a moment. And as I say, it reduces the reliance on the solicitor to explain a lot of these environmental issues, because the text in the paper copy and the text on the online viewer have been written for the layperson to understand. Again, you don't have to be an environmental consultant to actually understand what's going on in these reports. So all good news. Plus, of course, where risks have been identified, apart from contaminated land, where you certainly do need to be involved, but if there's a flood risk identified or an energy and infrastructure issue, we try to steer your client to the appropriate organisation to give them advice. So rather than them picking up the phone and asking you, and then you have to spend time with them and point them in the right direction, we're doing that for you already. So all of that in the one report. The front pages, 2 different front pages. The one on the left, obviously, is your worst nightmare, and the one on the right is what you're absolutely hoping to see. Each report comes with a professional opinion where the risks have been identified or not. And the great thing about this is that you can simply copy and paste that text into the report on title or correspondence that you're sending out to your client. So again, it does make life easier. If risks have been identified in exactly the same way that you would see them in your EnviroSearch report, we provide the detail. We also provide detailed mapping to identify where that risk is in relation to the proximity of the property. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we also include a lot of useful contact numbers. So as well as providing our own support teams, we will point your client in the direction of the Department of Energy and Climate Change, for argument's sake. If there's an energy and infrastructure issue, we will point them in the direction of specialist flood folk who they can, allay any questions or queries that your client may have. Obviously, if there is an issue of further action on contaminated land, you do need to be involved in exactly the same way as you are now. Get that support information to us and we will be able to review that and hopefully get that back to you as a pass. But you can see where it says further action, just below that it says click to view map. The PDF document that we send you is a dynamic PDF. And when you click that, on your desktop computer, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone, a unique online viewer will open up. The first couple of pages have this tutorial, but once you're familiar with this, where it says I'd like to find my own way around, click on that, that'll disappear. And there we are, there's page 2, just to give your clients some guidance on how to use it. But once you're familiar with that, that will disappear. And there's the client's property in Headon. Now, as you look at that, on the left-hand side, just below where it says Risk View, the toolbar highlights contaminated land, flood, energy and infrastructure, and so on. I should just mention, actually, you can, at point of order, request our Plan Search Plus report. You'll receive the Plan Search Plus PDF document in the normal way, but on that toolbar there will be the added box that'll say planning, and it will highlight all planning applications from 0 up to 750 meters of the property, depending on the size of the development. Now, as I click through here, you can see the display is changing. We've clicked on contaminated land and the toolbox changes, and it will highlight the different elements of potential contamination. And when you click on that, you can see within the circle, the search radius, a little red dot has appeared. And if you click on that, a dialog box will pop up and tell you exactly what the problem is for that particular element of the report. Here you can see an issue around the energy and infrastructure screen, and of course the search radius is far greater. It goes out to a maximum 4 kilometers, but it works in exactly the same principle. And here you can see we're looking at wind energy, so you click on wind farms or wind turbines and it will show the proximity of the, well, in this case, a wind farm, but it could be solar, it could be biomass, it could be HS2, and so on. And again, you click on the little red dot and the dialog box will appear. I mentioned planning, and here is an illustration of that. At the bottom, you can see planning applications. You can see the little square which highlights the boundary of the client's land. And here, as you click on through that, it will show here's a 250 meter search radius, and then when you click on the dots, it shows you that there is indeed a planning application, and gives you all the relevant information. It was submitted in January 2011, and so on. But if your neighbour is putting on an extension up to a search radius of 750 meters, and that is when we're searching for building developments greater than 200 properties. And of course, that could have quite an impact on your client's buying decision. So there we have an all-in-one report, £83. To me, if you'll exclude the slang, I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. In terms of the take-up, we are providing thousands of these every month to solicitors up and down the country. It's not little hotspots, and there's a split of about 50-50 for those solicitors who are ordering it as a standalone report, i.e. the 4 reports in one, and 50% are including the planning report as well. So hopefully that will make life a lot easier for you and your clients in terms of residential reports. Now, what about commercial? For the commercial conveyancers amongst you, I'm going to put 3 reports up on the screen and just generally talk through them, and hopefully if you're not familiar with all of these, it could be a breath of fresh air for you. The one in the middle, though, for commercial lawyers, I'm sure you're all familiar with, is our Site Check range of products. The one on the screen is actually our Site Check combined. It combines, as well as dealing with contaminated land Part 2A, it deals with the issue of flood. And generally, we would recommend you always use, as minimum, the combined report. A little bit more cost effective for your client. They'll save £50 or £60, but of course in terms of due diligence, it's belt and braces. This is an automated report, so it will generally come back to you very, very quickly. It is a polygon search because obviously the commercial sites can be quite large, so whatever the boundary of the your client's site is, the search radius goes out from that boundary, so the whole site is covered for, in this case, contaminated land and flood. If it were site check assess, you'd just be dealing with the issue of contaminated land. And within there, you will have, again, all of the relevant information. If risks have been identified, it will map and show you where those risks are. There's historical mapping in there. Everything really that you need to know. This will go to a maximum site size of 150 hectares. Now that's a pretty big site. One of the most important things here is that you can use this every day of the week where there is no change of use and no redevelopment, and that's key. If there is redevelopment, then we would suggest you default to the Site Solutions commercial or combined reports. So Site Check Assess, you can use that for retail operations. There's a tobacconist or a butcher's shop or a hairdresser's up the high street, a sandwich bar. It's closing, stopping trading on Friday, new owners on Monday, nothing's changing. This is the one to use. It could be a much larger commercial development, a factory for argument's sake, again, changing hands, closing down on Friday, new owners on Monday. This is the report to use. Absolutely wonderful. No change of use. They're not planning to knock down the buildings at all, make any alterations. So business as normal. But what if there is redevelopment? Well, as I say, we would suggest you defer to the Site Solutions Commercial or Site Solutions Combined. The main reason is because, again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a manual report, and as well as literally manually pulling all the data sets together for this report, the consultant will also look at the impact redevelopment's going to have on that site. Is it possible to spread contamination and so on? No maximum site size on this report. It is tiered pricing from 0 up to, I believe it's 150 hectares. After that, it's price on application, and they simply apply sort of a 50 hectare band pricing tariff. Very, very flexible. Again, if there are issues with this in terms of further action, or indeed if you just want some help and advice, the author's contact details are going to be in that report. It's worth mentioning, I think, at this stage, especially with commercial transactions. Argyll are a very respected environmental consultancy company. So as well as producing the desktop reports, they have a number of bespoke services from full consultancy. So if we get to a stage where you can't get past a further action and you need, for instance, a phase one phase one report, site visit, soil samples, all of this sort of thing, rather than send your client away to speak to their consultant, you can regain some control and offer the services of Argyll, who will be more than happy to help you. So they're the main differences between the two commercial reports. So Site Solutions commercial combined would be ideal if you've got a client that they run a small building company perhaps, they are building 6 or a dozen houses a year, they may be someone that buys a residential property and turns it into a small cul-de-sac. There's a lot of that going on at the moment. That is the report to use. It could be you have corporate clients that you're dealing with, much, much larger developments. As I say, no maximum site size. I've seen these reports being used for shopping malls, office blocks, and so on. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what this report can be used for. For those of you that are involved in agricultural work, again, it is Argyll that have the solution. In this particular slide, you can see the Estate Solutions Farm report. If you look at that, actually, I should have changed this, but it does have the name of the company called Renaissance. A lot of you that deal with agriculture will recognize that name. Renaissance were the go-to people for agricultural reports. Landmark have a habit of buying companies that are doing a job very, very well. And we did indeed buy Renaissance, and they now fly the flag of Argyle. Without wanting to sound like an advert for a tin of varnish, this does do exactly what it says on the front page. It deals with all things relating to farms. So as well as dealing with Part 2A, this also incorporates a full flood report as well. And I should mention, I think that all of Landmark and Argyle's flood reports fully comply with the Law Society's practice note. What does that mean? All four major flood risks, river, coastal, surface water and groundwater, are all included in the risk analysis. So remember that when you're ordering a flood report. It is important. But back to the farm report. Great value for money. There's no maximum site size, but the first pricing band, 0 to 50 hectares, quite a large area, £250. Can you use this report for other purchases of large areas of land? Absolutely. It can be used for, if people are buying just paddocks, woodland, anything like that, where there's large areas of land. This is often a very cost-effective way of dealing with this. Something else to bear in mind, and this is quite commonplace with agricultural transactions. A lot of people, when they say they're buying a farm, they think of the farmhouse and the farmyard and some land in the immediate vicinity. Of course, we know better. That's not always the case. The farm is often consists of a few acres of land here, and 5 miles down the road, there's another couple of hectares of land, and so on and so on. How do you deal with that? Well, on those occasions, what Argyle will do is run an individual report for each site. So if you upload the boundaries of the land to be searched to Searchmove, we then will look at all of those locations, run a report on all of those locations, look at the total acreage or hectare area and price accordingly. And again, no maximum site size. I think it's up to 250 hectares, it's tiered pricing, and then price on application after that. So with those three reports, I think you've got most of your bases covered for your standard and non-standard transactions, so where there's no redevelopment, where there is redevelopment, and then your agricultural reports. Now, on the back of the success of RiskView Residential, we have now produced, I think it was last November, RiskView Commercial. And I have to tell you that this is flying out of the door. Why? Well, it's based on the Site Check Assess range of products. So it includes Site Check Assess for contaminated land, our full Site Check Flood Report, the full Energy and Infrastructure Report, and the full Ground Stability Report. And again, you have full professional opinion, very, very easy to read. The online viewer works in exactly the same way. So there's your professional opinion. And again, you can copy and paste this information. Detailed mapping, so site location. If no risks are identified, you will just have the site location. But if risks are identified, you'll have the more detailed mapping. And the map that's just popped up there is the energy and infrastructure map. Again, if issues have been identified, then excuse me, then you will have all of the information you'd expect to find in your normal Site Check Assess report, mapping on sort of ground stability, professional opinion, and so on. The online viewer, as I say, works in exactly the same way. The only main difference on this occasion is with flooding. When you click on the different elements of flooding, the flood depth information is highlighted separately, and that's a unique feature. So literally you can see from like 0 millimeters up to a meter depth of water. And of course, the landmark flood reports, of course, now include topography. So we're looking at the elevation of the property in relation to the position of flood water. So they really are extremely comprehensive reports. As you click on the individual elements of the report, then the explanation as to what to do, what the particular risk is, are written in a very easy format, so it's easy for your client to view. I should say, with RiskView Residential and Commercial, the online viewer, the data on the online viewer, is a snapshot in time. It's not constantly updated, and it's viewable for your client for a period of 12 months, and then they would have the paper copy to fall back on. Why is this so popular for transactions where there's no change of use and no redevelopment? Well, here you can see the breakdown of the individual costs of the report. And I think it's £305 is the total cost of the 4 reports. RiskView Commercial has 2 pricing bands, 0 to 15 hectares, which is certainly a large area, £250 plus VAT. And for those clients that have sites greater than 15 hectares and up to 40 hectares, £385. So you can see straight away the 15 hectare price band, very cost effective. If you were to buy a site check assess and a site check combined, let's say flood was alerted and you had to buy a flood report, you're into the 200 and 30, 40 pounds. So you're not far short of the RiskView Commercial, and you're getting 2 additional reports. So a very comprehensive report for your clients. So hopefully you'll consider that and get in touch with Bill and his team, and they will be delighted to send you over the relevant information for that report. Now, planning. I'll just touch on this quite lightly, really. A lot of you, I've mentioned Plan Search Plus. Originally, Plan Search Plus was introduced to support the Con29. And in the early days, we simply included planning applications within 250 metres of the report. And I think that report cost about £26. We've beefed it up quite dramatically over the years, hence Plan Search Plus, now £31. And if I just show you a couple of things here. This case study is in Southampton, actually. The yellow rectangle represents an old people's home along the lines of a McCarthy and Stone type of accommodation. The red rectangle, the building there, is a residential property, very large, but for many years it was used as a chiropractor's practice. So if you had dodgy feet, that's where you would go. Now, in 2013, no more chiropractors practice. That's been knocked down. And my friend my work colleague, he's also a friend, who lives in Southampton, did a bit of candid photography and watched the development. I think he also did a bit of breaking and entering to get some of these photos. But you can see the property, it really dwarfs the old people's home. Now, if you look at the front page of Plan Search Plus, you can very quickly identify if there are indeed applications for development within a certain radius of your property. And you can see there, your next door neighbour is putting an extension on 0 to 50 metres up to 750 metres if dwellings of over 200 are being built, and all stops in between. Back to Southampton, that is the report that was run there, and you can see the little star in the centre there, that's the chiropractor's practice. What was interesting about this particular case, if you look at the 2 bottom entries, the bottom one first, you can see that in 2008, a planning application for 11 flats was declined. They bided their time, and then in 2011 putting a planning application for 20 flats, and of course planning permission was granted. So weren't they very happy bunnies, I would imagine. But that just shows the change in the planning regime. There's this presumption to buy. What else is included in the report? Well, we do look at land designation, particularly important if people are buying property because of views in front of them. Local authorities, often their tennis courts, cricket pitches, pitch and putt, the park, anything like that is liable to be built on, it seems, these days. So probably more so than greenbelt land. But anyway, we talk about land designation. And what's going on in the area. We also look at rights of way. We put information about education, what's going on in schools. No interest to you whatsoever, but your clients who are moving into the area with a young family, all crucial stuff. Also, local amenities. Where's the doctor, dentist, restaurants, the pub for dad. So lots of useful information in there as well. The commercial version of this report is site check planning. A number of you I know will be very familiar with that. Again, very well priced. The main difference here is it doesn't incorporate the education data and the local amenities. And of course, it's also a polygon search because of the large size of the development. Now, what about some of the ancillary reports if you want them as standalone reports? I've changed this little presentation because we have updated our residential flood reports. Why have we done it? Well, some of the reasons there, flood risk is, whether you like it or not, a real concern to a lot of homeowners. Why do we know this? With our Risk-View Residential, what are the two key factors that solicitors and the home buyer are looking at, whether it's identified or not in the report? Everyone clicks on flood and everyone clicks on ground stability. They are, key areas of concern. There's a lot of reports out there now which purport to be, top quality reports, very, very expensive as well. So because of this, we've made some key enhancements to our what used to be Home Check Professional Flood, we now call Home Check Flood. And as I say, we've made some significant improvements within this report. And that in itself is generating a lot more passes because we now incorporate the topography, as I mentioned earlier, as well as flood depth information. So we will look at the elevation of the property in relation to the flood waters. But most importantly and uniquely, if the report comes back with a high flood risk, before we send it out to you, it is sent down to our environmental consultants in Brighton, Argyll, and they manually review the flood data. That in itself is responsible for a reduction in high returns. The easiest way to explain this, with an automated report, you have the 25-metre search radius that goes out. If floodwater is identified as perhaps just encroaching an inch or two, literally, into that search radius, you will get a further action or a high flood return. With the manual facility, the environmental consultant can look at the data sets and say, well, look, this is a worst case scenario, and it's actually, in the worst possible situation, it's going to be a considerable distance from the property, and we can safely say that this is not high risk, and we can reduce the risk to moderate. And it's having a significant effect on the high reduction in high risk flood results. So it's really good news for you, and of course for your client. What about cost? Well, the Home Check Professional was £20. The new report is £25, so it's a little bit dearer. But for the peace of mind, the manual review, the fact that we now have flood depth information and the topography, the elevation of the property, we have seen literally zero drop-off in these reports being taken up. It is, as I say, apart from the high risk element, which is manual, it's an automated report. Like all of our reports, you get this nice clear report on the front. with detailed mapping. There's some generic information on how to make your home watertight, flood resilient measures, and there's information on flood re. And if you were to buy this report as a standalone report, it also has an online viewer. So when you click on the little graphic there, you see the tablet, the couple of hands holding the little tablet, click on that, and exactly like the risk view products, this will highlight for your client exactly where the flood risk is. So again, very, very comprehensive report for your client. Now, what if there is a high risk? It goes for a manual review, and the consultant says, yeah, unfortunately, there is a flood risk here, and it has to remain at high. What do you do? Because it might not necessarily be the end of the transaction. There's not necessarily the need to throw your hands up in despair. It could be the property of your client's dreams, and they would like some more information. Argyle produce a residential report called Flood Solutions Consult. It is a full property-specific manual flood assessment of that property. And again, this can be used. You might have a client that's buying a property with a known flood risk, but they really do like that property. Why bother with the standard flood report? Why not just go to the more detailed one, i.e. the Flood Solutions Consult report? So it's fully manual. It's absolutely property specific, and it will give details of the impact that the flood will have on that property. It will also give you, you can see the price there, £99, so really good value for money. It will give specific flood resilience measures. It's a very comprehensive report. It has a professional opinion on all elements of the report. Nice, easy graphics there you can see for what's causing the problems. But as I say, in this case, they will say, because of the data they hold, they'll say, well, yes, there is a flood risk, but it's actually to the southwest corner of the building. The front will never flood. It may say, yep, you're going to be, a metre underwater in the worst case scenario. But if it's not quite as bad as that, they will certainly give you details of how you can make your property watertight. So a very comprehensive report for those clients that really want to go ahead with that transaction. Energy and infrastructure, you'll be pleased to know I'm coming to the end of this presentation, but our energy infrastructure as a standalone report deals with all the issues you see on the screen there. So gas and oil exploration, affectionately known as fracking, wind and solar farms, renewable power stations, so things like anaerobic and biomass fuel, becoming incredibly popular actually, HS2, Crossrail and so on. And it will give detailed mapping, £25, no differentiation at all between residential or commercial transactions. A very comprehensive report with, you'll see a definite similarity in the mapping because we throw out a 2 and a 4 kilometre search radius, and in this case it's solar farms, so we will tell you where there is an existing solar farm or if a planning application has gone in. We'll also tell you a little bit more detail as to who owns that site. In terms of biomass, as with this one, again, what it is, where it is in relation to the property, who owns it, and so on, and lots of other very useful detail. I've left the HS2 slide separately because HS2, you can download these maps online, but what you won't get are the safeguarded areas, and that's what you're looking at there, that beige area that's snaking through the countryside. That's a safeguarded area. So as well as showing the proximity of the line to the property, it'll tell you if it's underground, if it's overground, without wanting to sound like a womble, if it's in a gully. But this safeguarded area is important because it won't stop your client buying their home or their business in that safeguarded area, although that's often an area where compensation is likely to be due for people living in those areas. But more importantly, if your residential client or your commercial client wanted to extend their building, HS2 will be the first people that want to look at the plans. They really want to protect the integrity of that area of land. And unfortunately, if they say it's a no-go, then that extension won't be happening. So you've got clear information on all of those maps there. So again, no differentiation on price, £25 as a standalone report, great value for money, or of course just go for RiskView Residential or RiskView Commercial. Just a bit of fun, we are the market leader in our industry. So to be fair, why would you go anywhere else? However, because of that, we do have the luxury of tremendous skill and expertise. And in our Exeter office, our nerdy data people are based, and they geocode everything that comes in and cross-reference everything. We do go the extra mile to make sure we get it right. Okay, from time to time, there may be a bit of a blunder, but fortunately, it's very, very rare. But on this occasion, you can see the Department of Energy and Infrastructure have provided some data for us regarding onshore solar farms. It's the second entry from the bottom, the Biggles Solar Farm. They put it in the middle of the English Channel. They're overworked, underpaid. We've geocoded that, and it should have been a little bit further north, as you can see. I think that's probably is it Swansea area? My geography is not the best in the world. And again, here in this little village of Sinkhurst Green, they've plonked a solar farm smack in the middle of the village, whereas it should have been a kilometre or so further to the northeast. Now, okay, it's a bit of fun, but just imagine if you were buying a report like this that's not Landmark, and they don't have the luxury of a dedicated data team that can geocode everything. They may come back to you and say, "Hey, what's going on? The pub's going, it's going to be a solar farm." It's a bit of fun, but it's just worth highlighting that we do go that extra mile to make sure everything is right. We introduced our highways report, gosh, it must be about two and a half years ago now, and it will detail everything that you need to know in terms of traffic schemes, rights of way. This is the key thing. 98% of the time we turn this round in 5 to 8 working days. If there is a delay, it's normally down to a local authority. Sorry if you're a local authority listening to this presentation, but that unfortunately is a sad case. If we do become aware of that, we will manage your expectations and let you know as ASAP, so you can manage your client's expectations. There's a 200-meter search buffer from the client's property, and you can nominate specific roads at time of order, so that's useful, and everything's manually reviewed before it's sent out to you at a cost of £120 plus VAT. So a lot more than some local authority searches, a lot less than others, but you do get a consistent mapping and a consistency in the report. If you deal with a lot of local authorities, this one is down in Islington, £204 for their highways report, and this is what they received. 204 quid, and someone's grandchild's cuddled it in for them while someone wasn't looking. Instead of that, you get this nice consistent mapping for all of your reports. It will tell you what's going on. I'll just go back to that for a moment. It will give you bang up to date road traffic plans that work on a live link for 6 months ahead. Could be particularly important if your client's buying a sandwich bar in the high street, only to find they take ownership and the high street's closed for 3 or 4 months while it's being turned into a pedestrian precinct. So it can be, really useful information for your clients. Again, for your commercial transactions, the Landmark Utility Report. If you've got people buying either large or small areas of land, generally to redevelop the site, you want to know what the infrastructure is going on underneath that site. Traditionally, these have been a bit of a nightmare to interpret. We put all the data in a zip file and send it over to you, and you probably don't even open it, just send it on to your client and let their technical bods interpret the data. Fortunately, we've updated this report and it's now a nice, easy to read PDF document. Each utility company has their own section to highlight all the technical data and the mapping as to where their utilities are on that site. There's the technical data there. We also have, in conjunction with our utilities report, our digital utility overview plan. Now, this is an interactive PDF document which when you receive it, it will have the site map. And as you look at the left of the screen where it says map, BT, is it Transco, my eyes aren't what they used to be, and so on, you can switch off all of those utilities and then build them up layer by layer. And the feedback that I'm getting back from commercial lawyers is that this is worth its weight in gold, really useful. So the client can ascertain or determine where the utilities are, so where might the main structure of the building go and where should we put the car park, and vice versa. So very, very useful. In terms of the report itself, we will get this back to you with, gosh, up to 150 different service providers. The standard report will go up to 10 hectares, which is quite a large site. And we have put that 1,400 metre perimeter boundary in because on occasions we've had areas of land which have the weirdest and wonderful shape, which exceeds 10 hectares. So we've put that perimeter boundary in there. If you do have corporate clients that do a lot of land acquisition for redevelopment, we can bespoke these reports as well. So if it is greater than 10 hectares, don't panic. We bespoke that for you. In terms of cost and turnaround time, we have 3 levels of service: the 5, 10 and 20 day service, so standard, express and premium. And you can see that the costings there. Let me just explain though, if your client says, oh, well, I don't mind paying £550, I want this report back quickly, I'll have the 5-day turnaround. Within that 5 days, we will certainly send you a report, but it won't be a full report within that 5 days. It'll certainly have the key players, BT, your local water company, the electricity and telecoms will be there. But some of the other utilities won't have reported within that period of time. So we will send you another report within 10 days and then a final report within 20 days. So if time isn't crucial, I would always recommend you opt for the standard 20-day turnaround time at £350 plus VAT. The digital overview plan that I mentioned and showed you a moment ago, that is only available on the 20-day turnaround at a cost of £215. So you can see the total cost there of the standard report and the overview report, £565 plus VAT. Sounds like a lot of money, but if you're dealing with land acquisitions, in the multi-millions of pounds, then of course it's a speck in the ocean. Now, this is the final slide. You can't get away from it. Things are changing in the air quality arena. We have had this report sitting on our shelves collecting dust for a long time, but more and more local authorities are becoming acutely aware of their responsibility for their air quality. It seems to be in the news all the time now. This report fully complies with EU regulations, but as you would have heard on the news, a lot of organisations are trying to get air quality parameters even better, and our own one of the directors of Argyll is making it his personal crusade to improve air quality. So we do have an air quality report available. So if you have clients that have concerns about it, do contact us. This report will talk about where air quality management areas are up and down the country, where monitoring stations are, and so on. As I say, I think we have pretty much all bases covered. In terms of environmental issues, Landmark now hold the largest data sets in Europe. We do business in Germany. We're looking at South Africa. We're all over the place. The only reason I put this slide up is because we really do know your client's backyard a lot better than they think they do. So as I say, do feel free to contact us. We can provide, and Searchmove certainly can provide you with some support information for your clients. You can see that that brochure on the right with all the squiggly coloured arrows. Might the future value of your new home be at risk? It just brings to your customers' attention, I think it's 3 issues: energy and infrastructure, enviro, and flood. And we've also got some support material for you in terms of product matrix. You can see the one at the back there, the residential. That's the quick reference guide for residential. We have one for commercial products, and we also have our full matrix, which Searchmove will be delighted to provide for you. So with that, I believe I've pretty much come to the end of this presentation. Obviously, you will have all of Bill's contact details for Searchmove because you would have gained access to this presentation via their website. But if you would like to speak to me about anything, I'm not an environmental consultant, but we have an army of people who love all those technical, real geeky, difficult questions. Do feel free to contact me. I do hope you get some benefit from this presentation, and the beauty of it being recorded like this is you can dip in and out of it to refresh your memory as often as you like, which is absolutely wonderful. So if you've listened to my dulcet tones for the last however long it is, congratulations and well done, and thank you indeed for your very kind attention. Thank you very much. Cheerio.